Are you struggling to get combat XP quick in Hypixel Skyblock? Well, if you are, this is the right place. Today, I'm going to be going through some methods and strategies that you can use to get combat XP quick that goes from early game to end game. And on top of this, I'm going to be also just providing a couple of tips and tricks to maybe increase your combat wisdom. So just before we get into the actual methods for grinding combat XP, I'm just going to go through a couple of quick and easy ways to increase your combat wisdom, which if you didn't know is a multiplier for combat XP. Firstly, you have the booster cookie. You can buy this for around 4 million coins in the bazaar. The booster cookie is really great. You get bits, you get a couple of nice boosts, and also most importantly for this video, you gain 25 wisdom on all stats, which is really actually a nice buff. Additionally, another thing, you should always have a god potion active. In total, it gives you around 30 combat wisdom, which is also really nice, and considering it's actually pretty cheap as well. Some other things is pets. For example, you have the wolf pet, which is universal, just gives you 30 combat wisdom. And finally, an accessory that I recommend is the hunter ring, because the hunter ring, although it does require Sven's Lair 7. Anyways, with that said, let's move on to the first combat XP method. So, for the first combat XP method, we have Glacite Walkers. Now, as you probably guessed, this is meant for really early game, and it's kind of meant for people who are actually below combat 12, looking to maybe try and get themselves into the end, or maybe try and get themselves the requirement to use something like an Aspect of the Dragons or Dragon Armor. Every time you kill a Glacite Walker, you get around 50 to 60 combat XP, which for a new player is actually really good. And if you're scared that you can't actually kill these, then do not worry about this, because by using a pickaxe, you are easily able to one-shot them every single time. Because for some reason, pickaxes do like 90 times the damage that swords do. However, sometimes the Glacite Walkers, for a completely brand new player, they can actually do quite a lot of damage. So what I recommend is that you can stand on this spot, and then the Glacite Walkers, if there's not someone already killing them, they'll just walk over here, and then you can just go and kill them all with your pickaxe. So for the next method of getting combat XP, we have actually doing Revenants. Now there are a couple of reasons why I'm actually suggesting Zombie Slayer. Now the reason I mention Zombie Slayer is because Hypixel in itself give around 70 XP of combat per kill, at least for me. But most importantly, when you do Slayers, you get all the mini boss, and then the actual boss itself gives loads and loads of combat XP. So in general, you just level up your combat pets and your combat level really quickly. Now, although we probably all know that unless you're an Aatrox, that Zombie Slayer's the biggest money sink, Slayers are something that you're going to have to do regardless, and they're pretty essential for your progression in the game. So if you find yourself needing to get some combat XP, then I'll suggest do Slayers. You can just get them out the way, you don't have to touch them again, and you get some Rev XP as well. Now obviously the higher tier Revenants is obviously going to be better, although you are going to be losing more money. With tier 4 Revenants, you can actually do it in a really early game setup, or mid game perhaps. Just like Shadow Assassin and Zombie Knight Chestplate with a Liver Dagger should do the trick, and tier 5, you can actually get away with tier 5, even using Shadow Assassin sometimes as well. So now we travel to the End Island. Now I've got a couple of combat XP methods, but I'm just going to lump them into one sort of section. So the first, we're probably the most early game, is Zealot grinding. Zealot grinding, as you probably know, gives an okay-ish amount of coins. Not too much, but it's okay. But actually, for new game players, it gives a decent amount of combat XP. For me, it gives around 100 combat XP per Zealot, which is actually pretty decent, so you might be expecting rates of maybe 70 to 80. Now the big brother of Zealot grinding is the Zealot Bruiser hideout. If you run out here and you run behind here and you get to here, then you will find that there's going to be a ton of Zealot Bruisers. Now Zealot Bruisers, they do have 65,000 health as opposed to the 13,000 health of the Zealots in the end. However, if you can kill them, they're well worth it. In here, the Zealots are much tighter packed, so then you can kill much more in a shorter time span. And additionally, they give around double the amount of combat XP than the ones in the regular End Island. Even better yet, they actually drop double the amount of summoning guys. So overall, if you're able to farm the Zealots in here, then I definitely recommend doing so. And you can use like Final Destination, and I mean I'm using a Strayer, which is probably a little bit overkill. You can maybe get away with using a Liver Dagger or like a Katana or something. Any of those will work just fine. I just think that Zealot Bruiser grinding is actually a really good compromise of getting a ton of combat XP and also a really good amount of money at the same time. Now finally, how could I forget, we have the Voidgloom Slayer. Now the reason I suggest Voidgloom Slayer is because Voidglooms actually give loads and loads of combat XP. For instance, to summon a tier 3, it requires 11,000 combat XP, and the mini bosses, Voidling Fanatics, it gives so much combat XP, so you actually end up leveling your pet up really quickly, and your combat XP goes through the roof. Again, it's the same situation with the Rev Slayer. If you're actually able to do E-Man, preferably tier 3s is probably the most optimal, but if you're able to do this, I absolutely recommend this because it makes actually a really good amount of money. You unlock some really useful collections in the future, and you get a ton of combat XP. For tier 3s as well, the setup doesn't actually need to be that expensive. You can probably get away with like an Enderman pet, a full set of good final destination with a good amount of kills, and also maybe like a Vorpal or maybe an Atom Slit Katana if you really need it, and of course a lot of healing items. Although if you want to learn how to solo kill a tier 3, then I've also made another guide earlier this year. Just before we move on to the next combat XP method, I just want to ask if you're enjoying the video and finding it useful, then just take a bit of your time just to scroll down and hit the like button and subscribe button as well if you feel like it. It doesn't take long and it really helps me out. Anyways, without further ado, let's get back into the video. Now for the next method of combat XP, I'm going to suggest actually just dungeons, but more specifically, I'm going to be talking about floor 6. Dungeons in itself is a combat based skill, so you're always going to be gaining combat XP, and the mobs in dungeons drop a decent amount of combat XP, especially if you're playing like a hype mage and you're just spam clicking everything and just killing everything. I also think dungeons is great for combat XP, well it's just great in general because it's pretty fun, not too repetitive, and it actually can make a pretty good amount of money. So you hear me say F6 at the start, and that's for good reason. For a while, a really efficient way of leveling up your golden dragon is by F6 Fragruns, because let me just break down some numbers for you. The Terracottas as base XP give 300 combat XP, so with loads and loads of boosts and stuff, you can probably get that like 400 to 500 per kill. Satan's Giants are around 3000 combat XP per kill, which again you can probably get to around 4.5, 5. And then finally, the Golems, which are the ones that actually drop the Ancient Roses, although those prices have pretty much crashed now. They're worth 4k combat XP a pop. For me, I find F6 actually pretty fun, and considering how actually good it is for combat XP, it's quite easily repetitive. Floor 6 isn't even that hard to do. It's much easier than compared to, let's say, like tier 4 Voidglooms, and overall, I definitely recommend this to get loads and loads of combat XP. Now, there's just one brief thing that I want to mention in between this. The Bestiary is a fantastic way of getting tons and tons of combat XP, because if you look into Bestiary now, my milestones, for every even milestone that you unlock, you get the 1 million combat XP, which is actually really good. So, whilst I'm not saying that you should go kill lapis zombies for 5 hours straight, the Bestiary is definitely something to consider for killing a wide variety of mobs. Is actually really good. So that's also why another reason that dungeons is actually really good. So finally, we have ghost grinding. Now how could I include a combat XP guide without ghost grinding? Now I'm just going to go out there and straight up admit it, I'm really not much of a ghost grinder. So if you want an actual ghost guide, then I'm not going to be listing any setups or anything because I feel like that'll be way out of my knowledge of expertise. I'm just going to be stating why ghost grinding is actually really good. With ghost grinding, and if you're good at it and you have a really good bestiary, some people can actually make up to 30 million coins an hour, which is by far the most on this list. It's easily grindable, and alongside the money, the combat XP it gets is actually really nice as well. For instance, for every ghost you kill, you're getting around 180 combat XP to 200, depending on how much combat was you have, but that's for like an average amount. Now, although the barrier to entry of ghosts is pretty high, because now ghosts don't actually aggro you, so you actually have to just go and basically just 1-tap or maybe 2-tap the ghost just individually. This does make your job a lot harder because you have to deal enough damage, like well over like 500-600k damage to be able to have a chance of grinding ghosts efficiently. But overall, I still think that if you're able to do this money making method quickly and efficiently, then there's no reason why you shouldn't do it because it gives you a ton of combat XP. And that's probably going to wrap it up for this video. If you enjoyed the video, or found it helpful at all in any way, then you know what to do. Leave a like, consider subscribing, and with that, thank you very much for watching until the end, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.